My dear friends, we live in an age where truth, once hidden, begins to rise to the surface. It rises not because men will it so, but because truth has always belonged to eternity, and eternity has a way of uncovering what darkness desperately tries to conceal. Perhaps you have been touched by the shadows of a narcissist, someone whose charm was a mask, whose promises were empty words, and whose affection was never more than a carefully staged illusion. They thrive in secrecy, for secrecy is the soil in which deception grows. Yet, no matter how carefully they bury their dark secrets, there comes a time when the earth itself refuses to hold them any longer. That time, dear soul, is now. We stand on the threshold of revelation. The narcissist's hidden deeds, their twisted games, their manipulations, and their cruelty are being dragged into the light. And with this exposure comes karma, the consequence that cannot be escaped, the harvest that cannot be postponed, the justice that cannot be silenced. But before we examine the shocking news that is about to unfold, let us begin with something far more personal, far more intimate, the voice that guides you through the storm. The power of intuition, heaven's whisper in the soul. There is within every human heart a compass, a quiet but unshakable guide that whispers even when the world shouts. Some call it instinct, others call it conscience, but I call it by its truest name, a whisper from heaven, a touch of eternity in the mortal frame. Intuition is not a luxury. It is not some mystical ornament reserved for poets and dreamers. It is a survival gift, a divine safeguard, planted within us long before we knew how to name it. And those who learn to listen to this inner guide walk through storms with a lantern in their hand, while those who silence it stumble in darkness, led not by truth but by voices that deceive. Think for a moment about the times in your own journey when intuition saved you. Perhaps you walked into a room and felt an unease you could not explain, only to later discover deceit hiding there. Perhaps you delayed signing a contract because something in your soul whispered, "Wait," and in waiting you uncovered dishonesty that would have cost you everything. Or perhaps you lingered near a loved one, delaying your own plans, only to find that your presence protected them from harm. Do not treat these moments lightly. They are not coincidences. They are evidence. Evidence that the eternal God has not abandoned the children of men, but still speaks, still guides, still bends down to whisper into our fragile hearts. Go here, avoid this, wait for the right time. The tragedy, however, is that we live in a world designed to drown out this sacred voice. The narcissist, above all others, has perfected the art of silencing it. They weave words like silk, binding your mind with compliments, with promises, with false urgency. They laugh at your hesitation. They accuse you of being paranoid when your spirit detects danger. They chip away at your confidence until you no longer trust your own discernment. And here lies the danger. When you no longer trust your intuition, you become prey. You walk into traps you might otherwise have avoided. You accept chains disguised as gifts. You surrender your power to someone who never intended to love you, only to control you. But hear me, friend, your intuition is not a weakness. It is not suspicion. It is the safeguard of your soul. It is the candle in the window when the night outside is blackest. And though you may have ignored it once, or even silenced it for years, it remains, it waits, it never truly leaves, for the one who placed it within you does not revoke his gifts. Let us look at it plainly. Intuition is not always comfortable. Sometimes it comes as a knot in your stomach, a restlessness you cannot explain. Sometimes it steals your sleep, burdening you with an unease you can't articulate. And yes, sometimes it makes you look foolish to those around you. But better to appear foolish and be safe than to appear wise and walk willingly into ruin. C.S. Lewis once said that God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. Intuition is often the whisper stage, so gentle, so easy to dismiss. Yet, when you ignore it, the whisper grows into a shout. Life itself begins to bend and break until you are forced to pay attention. How many heartbreaks, how many betrayals, how many dark nights of the soul could have been avoided if only we had listened to the first whisper? Now here is the irony. The narcissist, in their arrogance, believes they can hide their secrets forever. They are masters of deception, accustomed to wearing masks, convinced that if they speak loudly enough, no one will hear the still small voice warning, something is wrong here. But they underestimate intuition. They underestimate the God who gave it. Because intuition does more than protect you, it exposes them. Long before their dark secrets rise into the daylight of public shame, your spirit already knows. You sense the cracks in their story, the inconsistency in their smile, the hollowness in their love. And though you may not have proof to present in a court of law, you carry proof enough in the courtroom of your soul. That is why I urge you, reclaim your intuition, dust it off like a forgotten heirloom, trust it as you would trust the hand of a faithful friend. For in the days ahead, as dark secrets come tumbling into the light and the karma of the narcissist unfolds, it is not gossip that will anchor you, nor speculation that will guide you. It will be your intuition, that holy whisper, that lantern in your chest. And let me say one more thing. Intuition is not merely about avoiding danger. It is also about stepping into destiny. The same voice that warns you, "Don't go there," is the voice that invites you, "This is the way, walk in it." The same inner nudge that says, "Leave this toxic presence," is the one that says, "Embrace this new opportunity, trust this new friend, say yes to this chapter." So do not despise the whisper. Do not second-guess the gift. In a world where narcissists build their kingdoms on lies, intuition is heaven's guarantee that the truth will find you, protect you, and guide you home. Gossip and the streets whisper when truth travels without permission. There is a curious law woven into the fabric of the world. Truth, though hidden, has a way of traveling. It moves quietly at first, like a rumor drifting from one ear to another, but in time it gathers such weight that no wall, no mask, no disguise can restrain it. The narcissist believes they can silence truth. They imagine that if they can charm enough people, intimidate enough voices, and maintain their stage long enough, the secrets of their heart will remain buried. But life is not built to accommodate lies forever. Sooner or later, the whispers begin. You have likely seen this unfold. At first it is a small observation made by someone brave enough to notice, something about them doesn't add up. Then another voice echoes it. I've seen the same. Soon the quiet whisper becomes street talk, a current of gossip that moves through circles and communities. What once was hidden in shadow is now traced in the light of conversation. Now, gossip itself is not a noble thing. It is often reckless, sometimes cruel. But here is the paradox. Gossip, though imperfect, can also be an instrument of exposure. Like water seeping into cracks, it finds its way around barriers. Like wind rustling through leaves, it carries news from one corner to another, until the false image carefully constructed by the narcissist can no longer stand. For the narcissist, this is torment. Their identity depends on control, control of the story, control of perception, control of the narrative. But when whispers spread, when word on the street begins to echo louder than their own voice, they lose the very weapon they trusted most, the ability to define how others see them. You may wonder, why does this matter? Why must the street speak? Why must whispers spread? The answer is simple. Because secrecy is the womb in which narcissism grows. As long as no one talks, as long as everything is hidden, the narcissist remains powerful. But when exposure begins, when words spill into the open, their kingdom begins to crumble. Gossip is the crack in the wall, the leak in the dam. And once that leak begins, the flood is inevitable. Do not be surprised if this exposure begins in the smallest ways. A conversation you did not expect, a revelation you overhear in passing, a confession whispered by someone who can no longer bear the weight of silence. The narcissist's name will appear where they least expect it, not in flattery, but in suspicion, not in reverence, but in dismay. And here, my friend, is the beauty of it. You need not lift a finger. The narcissist's own actions, their own duplicity, their own hidden life will betray them. The voices of others will carry what you once bore alone. Where once you felt isolated, unheard, and doubted, you will now find that the truth walks on its own legs, carrying itself into the light of day. But remember this, do not mistake gossip for ultimate justice. Gossip is but the opening act. It is the alarm clock that wakes the world to what has been hidden. It is not the verdict, but the summons. The final word belongs not to the street, but to truth itself, to karma, to the divine justice that ensures that every hidden deed is brought into account. So when you hear the whispers, when you sense the talk rising, do not be afraid. Do not grow anxious at the thought of your name being entangled in their lies, for truth is on your side. Instead, stand still and watch as the very web they spun to entrap others becomes the net in which they themselves are caught. The gossip, the whispers, the word on the street, these are not enemies to fear, but signs to discern. They are the sound of the mask cracking, the signal that a hidden world is about to collapse. They are the first tremors of the earthquake that will bring down the edifice of deceit. For years, perhaps, the narcissist has walked boldly, confident that no one would ever uncover their hidden deeds. But now, the whispers betray them, and what begins as rumor will soon become revelation. The cycle ends. When karma knocks on the door, there is a rhythm to life that no human hand can rewrite. It is as ancient as the tides, as steady as the rising and setting of the sun. What is sown will be reaped, what is hidden will be revealed, and what is unjust will not endure forever. The narcissist, in their pride, imagines they can escape this rhythm. They believe that if they play their games long enough, if they manipulate carefully enough, if they hide their hands skillfully enough, then justice will never catch up with them. But they forget a truth so simple, so undeniable, that even a child knows it. Seasons change, and every cycle has its end. For years, perhaps, the narcissist has thrived in repetition. They have lived in a loop of charm and destruction, gaining admiration, feeding on others' energy, discarding lives as if they were disposable objects. To them, this cycle feels endless. Like a wheel that always spins in their favor, it convinces them that tomorrow will look exactly like today, that they will always outrun the consequences of their choices. But here is where divine law interrupts human illusion. A cycle cannot continue forever when it is built on deception. A season of exploitation cannot last without eventually giving way to a season of reckoning. Just as winter gives way to spring and day yields to night, so too the narcissist's reign of control must yield to the arrival of karma. Karma is not a word meant to frighten, but to awaken. It is not blind punishment, but the natural unfolding of what has been planted. Every action carries its seed, and every seed grows in time. The narcissist has planted lies, manipulation, betrayal, and cruelty. And though they believed the soil of secrecy would protect them, those seeds have taken root. The harvest cannot be postponed forever. When the cycle ends, it does not whisper, it thunders. What was once delayed now arrives suddenly. The narcissist who believed they had plenty of time will find that time has run out. The people they thought would always protect them will begin to withdraw. The masks they trusted will slip. The opportunities they exploited will dry up. It will feel, to them, as if the world itself has turned. But in truth, it is simply the balance of life correcting what was long out of order. This moment when the cycle breaks is both painful and liberating to witness. Painful because you see the unraveling of a person who once seemed untouchable. Liberating because you realize that their grip on your life and on others was never eternal. Their control was always borrowed time. Their dominance was always temporary. What makes this season even more shocking is its speed. For a long while, it may appear as though nothing is happening. You wonder if justice has fallen asleep, if God has forgotten, if truth has been silenced. But then, suddenly, the storm comes, and it comes faster than anyone expected. Doors begin to close for the narcissist. Their reputation falters, their relationships fracture. The very cycle they once depended on hurt, charm, rebuild, repeat no longer works. They reach for the same strategies that always worked, but now those strategies fail. It is as if life itself has conspired against them, because in truth, life has. This is why the breaking of the cycle is a moment of hope for you. It is the sign that you are not trapped in an endless loop. It is the signal that the suffering you endured is not the final chapter. The narcissist cannot repeat history forever. Their cycle ends. Their time runs out. And when it does, karma is not cruel, it is exact. It gives back precisely what was sown. To the narcissist who thrived on exploitation, it brings isolation. To the one who deceived, it brings exposure. To the one who used others' loyalty, it brings betrayal. What they once gave so freely to others, they now taste for themselves. So take courage. Do not think the wheel of injustice spins endlessly. Life does not forget. Truth does not sleep. And when the cycle ends, it ends completely. The narcissist will discover that karma is not a distant myth, but a present reality, arriving swiftly, decisively, and inescapably. Unmasking in public secrets, spill openly. There is a peculiar terror for those who live behind a mask, the fear that one day the mask will slip, not in private, not in whispers, but in the open air before the eyes of many. For the narcissist, this fear becomes reality. What was once whispered in shadows, what was once suspected behind closed doors, eventually bursts into the light of public revelation. Their secrets, once guarded like treasure, become exposed like wounds no cloak can hide. The human heart is designed for integrity. It was made to be whole, to live without fracture between the inner world and the outer image. But the narcissist rejects this harmony. They craft an outward identity polished with charm, accomplishment, and grand illusions, while inwardly harboring motives of selfishness, cruelty, and deceit. For a time, they may hold these two worlds apart. But no man can forever carry two selves without collapse. The truth always strains against the mask, and eventually, the weight becomes too much. The unmasking often comes suddenly, like a curtain pulled back at the wrong moment in a play. One careless word, one undeniable contradiction, one bold witness stepping forward, and the image begins to crack. Perhaps it is a financial scandal that surfaces. Perhaps it is a testimony from those they wounded. Perhaps it is the quiet but undeniable evidence of their own contradictions. Whatever form it takes, the exposure is not partial. It is not a gentle unveiling. It is a collapse. Imagine the narcissist standing in the crowd they once commanded, only to realize the crowd now stares with new eyes. No longer do they see the hero, the leader, the charmer. They see the manipulator, the deceiver, the one who feasted on trust and left behind ashes. The applause dies away. The admiration turns into suspicion. The stage that once elevated them becomes the platform from which their fall is witnessed. This unmasking is more than social embarrassment. It is spiritual justice. For truth is not content to whisper forever. It is patient, yes. It waits, sometimes for years. But truth is also relentless. When the time comes, it bursts forth like a river breaking through a dam. And when it does, no denial, no excuse, no spin of words can reverse the tide. The irony is this: the narcissist often writes the script of their own exposure. They craft so many lies, they forget which one was told to whom. They manipulate so many people, they fail to see the connections between them, and in the end, their own contradictions betray them. The same voice they once used to boast is the one that slips and reveals too much. The same allies they once deceived become the witnesses who testify. Their empire of illusion collapses, not because of outside attack, but because of inner rot. And you, who have endured their hidden cruelty, will see what you thought would never come: validation. What you knew in secret is now acknowledged in public. The weight of disbelief, the loneliness of carrying a story no one seemed to accept, will lift. The narcissist's secrets are no longer your burden. They are their own. There is something deeply reassuring in this, not because we take joy in another's downfall, but because justice restores balance. The unmasking is not merely punishment, it is revelation. It reveals the truth of who they are, but it also reveals the truth of who you are. For every mask that falls exposes not just their lies, but your endurance, your clarity, your strength in seeing through what others could not. When secrets spill openly, it feels as though the universe itself declares, the game is over. The narcissist can no longer play both sides. They can no longer charm and destroy in the same breath. Their duplicity is undone, and this, my friend, is a moment of turning. For once the mask falls in public, it never fits again. They may scramble to repair their image, to paste together fragments of reputation, but the audience has already seen behind the curtain. Once seen, it cannot be unseen. The spell is broken, the illusion is gone, and the narcissist must now live not as they pretended to be, but as they truly are. Shockwaves to relationships and reputation. Collateral exposure. When a stone is thrown into a still pond, the ripples do not remain contained to the point of impact. They travel outward, disturbing waters that seemed untouched. So it is when the narcissist's secrets spill into the open. The exposure is never confined to them alone. It sends shockwaves through every relationship they built, every reputation they constructed, every network they thought secure. The fallout is not limited to their own image. It reverberates across the lives of all who stood near them. For years, the narcissist cultivated allies. Some were drawn by charm, others seduced by promises, still others manipulated into loyalty. Together, these relationships created the illusion of strength, as though the narcissist's world was woven tightly and could never unravel. But when truth arrives, it slices through those threads with precision. Allies begin to question. Friends who once defended them hesitate. Colleagues who once praised them withdraw in silence. Reputation so carefully guarded, so tirelessly polished, cracks under the weight of reality. It is here that the cruelty of narcissism becomes fully visible, because when their mask falls, those closest to them often find themselves implicated. They discover that the lies they believed, the stories they repeated, the defenses they gave, now make them appear foolish or complicit. The narcissist's exposure does not simply reveal who they are, it reveals who trusted them, who covered for them, who was deceived by them. This collateral damage is devastating. It shatters not just one life, but many. The narcissist, of course, will scramble. They will try to hold on to some shred of loyalty, whispering excuses to those who remain. They will frame themselves as the victim of misunderstanding, or as the target of envy. But the spell no longer works. Those who once stood firmly in their corner now feel the ground trembling beneath their feet. Doubt spreads faster than charm, and reputation, once lost, is not easily restored. There is something profoundly just about this unraveling, because the narcissist's power never existed in isolation. It always depended on others' perception, on the reputation they built, on the trust they extracted. They rose by weaving webs of illusion across relationships and communities. So it is fitting that their fall comes through the collapse of those very bonds. The web they spun entangles them. The trust they exploited abandons them. The relationships they drained turn brittle and break. Think of reputation as a fragile glass. It can shine brilliantly in the light, but once cracked, it cannot be restored to its former wholeness. The narcissist may try to glue the pieces together, to present themselves as reformed or misunderstood, but the fracture is always visible. And the world does not forget what has been seen. For you, this moment brings clarity. You once carried the unbearable weight of knowing truth others did not believe. You once wondered if you were alone in seeing what you saw. But now, as the shockwaves spread, the same voices that once doubted you begin to acknowledge reality. The same relationships that ignored your pain begin to recognize the cost of their blindness. The truth you bore in silence now becomes undeniable in public. Yet, there is also sorrow here, because when the narcissist's image collapses, it does not only harm them, it harms those who genuinely believed in them. People who once invested hope, energy, even love, now face betrayal. The shockwaves are real. Trust, once broken, leaves scars. Communities once united fracture into suspicion. And innocent people, caught too near the blast, must now pick up the pieces of their faith. But do not mistake sorrow for defeat. In the breaking of false bonds, there is also the possibility of new beginnings. When illusions shatter, what remains is the ground of truth. And from truth, healthier relationships can grow, relationships no longer poisoned by deception, but rooted in honesty, loyalty, and mutual respect. So, when you witness the shockwaves, do not despair. They are painful, yes, but they are also cleansing, for the collapse of the narcissist's reputation clears the way for what is real. It dismantles the empire of illusion, leaving only what can endure the weight of truth. And though reputations may fall, though relationships may break, what rises afterward is far more solid than the fragile glass of lies. The narcissists panic, trying to regain control. There is a particular kind of fear that consumes the narcissist when their secrets begin to surface. It is not the fear of guilt, nor the sorrow of repentance. Those emotions are foreign to them. Rather, it is the terror of losing control. For control is the very air they breathe. They have built their lives upon the ability to shape perceptions, to bend narratives, to keep others dancing to the rhythm of their will. When truth rises like an unbidden tide, threatening to drown their carefully crafted illusions, panic seizes them in a way no external punishment ever could. You can almost feel it, the frantic scrambling of someone who has relied on masks for so long that they no longer remember their own face. When rumors swell, when whispers turn to shouts, when the gossip they once dismissed begins to gain traction, they are suddenly exposed as small, fragile, and utterly unprepared for the light. And so they do what they have always done. They reach for control. But now, their old tactics falter. What once worked flawlessly begins to unravel before their very eyes. First comes denial. With practiced ease, they insist that none of it is true. They will speak with confidence, with indignation, perhaps even with laughter, trying to convince others, and perhaps even themselves, that these revelations are mere fabrications. Yet the evidence piles higher, the testimonies align, and denial rings hollow. What once sounded persuasive now feels desperate. Then comes projection. Unable to bear the weight of exposure, they cast the blame elsewhere. It is always someone else's fault, a jealous rival, a bitter ex, a scheming colleague. They may even accuse the very ones they once harmed, painting themselves as the wounded party, the misunderstood victim of a cruel conspiracy. To the undiscerning, their story may sound convincing, but to those with eyes open, it is yet another mask, another desperate attempt to wrestle control from truth itself. And when denial and projection fail, manipulation intensifies. They call upon allies, begging for loyalty, demanding silence, offering promises they cannot keep. They play upon emotions, weaving guilt and fear into their pleas. Some may still respond, bound by old loyalties, but many hesitate. For something shifts when darkness is exposed to light. Even the most devoted allies cannot deny what stands plain before them. The narcissist's grip loosens, their web begins to fray, and panic grows heavier upon their chest. It is a strange sight, almost tragic, to watch someone who once moved with such false confidence now stumble in desperation. They will oscillate between anger and pleading, between arrogance and begging. One moment, they will thunder threats to anyone who dares speak against them. The next, they will whisper soft words of contrition, not from a place of true repentance, but from a calculated hope of regaining a foothold. It is a theater of panic, and the stage lights are merciless. What they do not understand, what they cannot grasp, is that once truth begins to break through, it is unstoppable. You can delay it, distract from it, deny it, but you cannot silence it forever. The narcissist fights like a drowning man thrashing against the current, only to discover that the very struggle hastens the sinking. In their frenzy to control, they expose even more of themselves. Their contradictions grow obvious, their inconsistencies glaring, their desperation undeniable. There is a spiritual justice in this unraveling. For years, the narcissist thrived by suppressing others, by taking away their voices, by controlling their stories. Now it is their own story that slips from their grasp. The narrative they so desperately want to script is rewritten by the truth they cannot contain. Their panic is not simply the fear of exposure, it is the anguish of realizing that the power they thought eternal was always fragile, always fleeting, always dependent upon illusion. And here lies the lesson for those who watch from the outside. Panic reveals the true foundation of power. If a person's authority collapses the moment truth is spoken, then it was never real authority. If their reputation disintegrates at the touch of honesty, then it was never integrity. The narcissist teaches us, in their downfall, that control built on deception is no control at all. It is smoke masquerading as stone, vanishing at the first breath of wind. So do not be surprised by their frenzy. Do not be swayed by their sudden apologies, nor intimidated by their sudden rage. Recognize it for what it is, the death throes of control. A kingdom built upon lies cannot stand, and the one who sits upon its throne cannot rule forever. The panic you witness is not the beginning of their rise, but the final notes of their fall. The shocking reveal, what they never wanted you to know. There comes a moment when secrecy collapses under the weight of truth. It does not happen gently. It happens like a thunderclap in the night sky, splitting darkness with light. For years, perhaps decades, the narcissist has guarded their hidden life with vigilance. They mastered disguise, speaking with conviction, smiling with charm, weaving illusions so tightly that many believed them impenetrable. Yet even the finest mask cracks under pressure. And when it does, the world does not just glimpse a flaw, it beholds the hidden face beneath. The shocking reveal is rarely a single detail. It is not merely one secret uncovered, but an avalanche of revelations, each stone dislodging another, until what was once concealed in shadows lies exposed for all to see. Financial corruption, betrayal of trust, hidden addictions, acts of cruelty, done in silence. These are the kinds of truths that pour out when the walls of deception break. The narcissist always believed these walls indestructible. They believed their cleverness, their charm, their control could keep the truth locked away. But truth, like water, finds the cracks and seeps through, and when it floods, it cannot be contained. The impact is profound, because what is revealed is not only the deed, but the depth of hypocrisy. Those who stood in their presence believed one thing perhaps, that this was a respectable figure, a caring partner, a faithful friend. The shocking reveal strips away the performance, showing that what seemed solid was hollow, what seemed generous was selfish, what seemed kind was calculated. The dissonance between image and reality strikes harder than the act itself. It is betrayal at its deepest. Not only were people harmed, but they were deceived into believing the harm was impossible. This is why the news feels electric. It spreads quickly, for truth long suppressed hungers to be known. Whispers multiply into conversations, conversations into headlines, and suddenly the narrative the narcissist fought so hard to control is no longer theirs. The world begins to ask, how long has this been happening? Who else knew? What else lies beneath? The shocking reveal does not just expose one secret, it casts suspicion on the entirety of their story. If they lied about this, what else have they lied about? If they betrayed in this way, what other betrayals remain hidden? For the narcissist, this is the nightmare they feared most. Not punishment itself, but exposure. Punishment can be endured in silence, but exposure humiliates. It strips away the costume before an audience they once commanded. Their power was never in their strength alone, but in the perception of others. When that perception shifts, when people finally see what was hidden, the narcissist loses the stage, and with it, they lose themselves. But for those who suffered under their deception, the shocking reveal is both vindication and liberation. Vindication, because you knew. You bore the weight of their cruelty in silence, and when you tried to speak, others dismissed it. Now, the truth proves you were never delusional, never exaggerating, never too sensitive. The scars you carry have always been real, and now the world sees why. Liberation, because once the secret is exposed, the hold of manipulation weakens. You no longer question your memory, your perception, your value. Truth restores what lies once stole, and yet there is grief in this revelation. To discover the extent of deceit wounds deeply. To watch others reel in shock, to see lives upended by what is uncovered, reminds us of the cost of deception. The narcissist's fall leaves collateral damage, broken trust, shaken families, communities split apart. The reveal is shocking not only because of what it uncovers, but because of how far the ripples spread. Innocent lives are always touched by the truth that should have been told long ago. Still, we must not shrink back from it. For truth, though painful, is never the enemy. It is the light by which healing begins. To cover darkness only allows it to fester. To expose it, however shocking, allows justice to breathe and freedom to grow. What the narcissist never wanted you to know is now before you. And though it may shock you, though it may break your heart, it will also set you free. Remember this. The shocking reveal is not merely about their downfall, it is also about your awakening. It is the moment when illusion dies and reality lives. It is the moment when your story of survival is validated. It is the moment when what was hidden in secret becomes the very foundation upon which new strength is built. The narcissist never wanted this day to come. But you, though wounded, are stronger because it has. For truth belongs not to the deceiver, but to the one who dares to face it. And once truth is spoken, no power on earth can unmake it.